Welcome to the Building Master Builders podcast, brought to you by Master Builders Victoria. Since 1875, we've championed high standards and supported professionals across the building and construction industry. During this episode, we're sharing some highlights from one of our webinars to give you some insight into some of the other resources available. You'll hear from Monique Burns, Senior Legal Counsel and Legal Manager at Master Builders Victoria, and Taurus Legal Management Director and Commercial Litigation Specialist, Alex Martin, who will guide you through the key considerations and strategies for effective succession planning and talk about the long-term future of your business in building and construction. The full version of this recording is available on our website and linked in the description.
Succession planning is about protecting everything that you built for your family, for your business and for your legacy so that it survives beyond you. It might be that your plan is to sell your business to a third party, an independent sale. That's succession planning. It might be that your plan is to sell to employees over time. It might be that your plan is to give it to your children. They're all succession plans. It might be that you just want to shut your business down. It might be the business is just you and your building license, and you might say, well, when I'm ready to retire, that's it for me. And I guess today's all about trying to think ahead for those things. Don't just wait till you retire and then suddenly shut your business down. You go, well, if your plan is to shut the business down, that's okay. If your plan is to give it to your kids, maybe your kids should be working in it now. Maybe you should talk to your couple of sons about how they're going to get along or whatever it is. It's about setting the wheels in motion to have those things all. It's all really about forward planning. Succession planning is really about three questions. It's who takes over, when do they take over, and how does that transition really happen? If it's done properly, it should deal with things. There should be a legal aspect to it, which really relates to your shareholder agreements, your company and trust structures, buy and sell agreements if there is any. Your wills. I'll come to wills in a little while, but your will is not your succession plan. Your will is about your personal assets, and normally your business is held in a company. And so, what actually determines who's in charge of that company if you're not around? And usually that's who's going to be the director, who's going to be the trustee of the family trust, that sort of thing. It's that which is totally outside your will. So why is succession planning important? The biggest risk in most businesses is not the economy or competitors. It's you. It's that something might happen to you. And most businesses, that if something happens to the main owner, to the owner manager, which is typically what building companies are, the business won't survive it, right? So, I've had a client, he ran a really good mid-sized building company for about 25 years, and was the kind of estimator, the rainmaker, brought in the clients. He had good relationships. He was the quality controller. He ran everything as often. He was the main shareholder as well, as often people do. And he thought his two sons were going to take over. And his two sons both worked in the business. And while he was a client of mine, he had a health scare. And he was in hospital, and things were touch and go for a while. And he had no real plan, but his sons continued to run the business. But they disagreed about everything, right? It wasn't clear who was going to be the kind of take the lead, and it wasn't clear who was doing what. They both had roles, and when he was there to give them direction, everything was all right. But when he wasn't there to give them direction, it wasn't kind of clear who was one supposed to be in relationships, and one was supposed to be in operations, or one business development, if you like, in operations. That seemed to be the kind of vibe, but that wasn't really discussed. Anyway, the clients panicked, and he had two major developers move their business elsewhere until things sort of stabilised. And I think if he hadn't been able to return to the business, they never would have come back. So within 6 months, the business had lost about 25% of its value, and more loss was on its way, but he recovered and he was able to get back into the business. But since then, he's been really a fan of succession planning, so, because of the health scare. So he sort of felt he spent a lifetime building something pretty special, and then it nearly disappeared because he hadn't planned ahead. You've got to create that space, and having the conversation to, and then create a space so that you can work out, well, what do I want to do all day? What other interests, what can I fill my life with except other than the business? So I'd say, in terms of starting the conversation, you sit down with your partner, or you sit down with your business partners, or your personal partner, or your family, whoever the key stakeholders are, and say, look, if something happened to me tomorrow, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, what would happen, and what would you want to happen? Do you guys want to take over the business? Do you just love love the business? Do you want just some money to pay off debts and live? And then say, okay, well, if that's what you want, are we ready for that? Are we ready to do whatever it is that you want? Do we have an insurance? Like if I get hit by a bus, are we insured so that I've got some life insurance? Or if I can't work in the business, can the business handle, that can the senior people just step in and do my job? Are we ready for that? And then once you go, okay, well, if we're not ready for that, what do we need to do to get ready for that? That's the conversation to have. If something happened to me tomorrow, what would you want? And how do we get, and how do we get ready to make that happen? So do that early. The earlier the better. I think that's something that you can do now, or you can do soon. It's something that people put off forever, like their will. I was guilty of I drafted my will and then didn't sign it for 6 months, right? So, we all can be guilty of just putting that stuff off. And I think it's really, you're talking about, something that you worked at for many, many years. You don't want it just to go by the wayside. So be inclusive, talk to people, don't make it a secret, talk to your family, your key staff, your co-owners, advisors. You go through and you identify. So first step, you identify the potential successors, family, internal team, external hire, external CEO, whatever it is that you want. Map out where the business value is. Is it not just in dollars? Is it the roles, the systems? Is it the particular client relationships? Is it, your building license? That's a personal thing. That's a bit hard to transfer. Is it, who owns all the documents and who's in charge of the, who has a vote? You might be used to following dad's instructions, but does the son have a vote or whatever? And have a clear roadmap and timeline. So are we planning, over the next 5 years to get systems in place so that you don't have to work in the business?
A member has asked, he says that I am the only registered builder in my business.
Yep.
We plan on operating that way until my retirement. Is it okay for my replacement to become registered after I have retired? Considering my replacement would have worked for me for some time, so they have a good understanding of how everything works.
Yeah, so that's okay. Big risk if for whatever reason you're not able to get registered. That's a problem. I don't see the downside in terms of getting them registered earlier than that. And that goes to kind of the sale ready. If you've got 2 registered builders, that's a good thing rather than 1. So I'd say I just encourage them to push forward on that early rather than late. But yes, they can get registered towards the end, and probably by the time, if they've been working for you for a few years, that would be good. But there's no reason that they have to wait till the very last minute to become registered. And that's, with building, that's one of the kind of special risks that the building industry has, in that the building license is personal. It doesn't attach to the kind of company. So and you might only have one. So if you've got one registered builder, then that's a risk. And if something happens to that registered builder, then you're not registered anymore. And we've certainly dealt with some disputes coming out of, and disputes with the licensing scheme, about people losing their license and so on. So, but I'd encourage them to just move forward with that.
What is the difference between a regular director of a company and a nominee director for the purposes of being a registered building practitioner?
So a director of a company is, at law, a director is a director. So they've got, obligations to pay tax, and if the company doesn't pay tax, they can be held personally responsible. They're going to be registered with ASIC, all that sort of stuff. So a nominee director is only going to become a director if certain conditions are met. And so until they're met, they don't become a director. So I think you've got to think about, basically, a nominee director is not a director.
So what happens in the event that he has a succession plan,
Yep.
for example, moving his business to his daughter, and
Right.
she agrees at the time. But then when it comes to it, after he dies, or if he gets injured, she no longer wants it.
So good question. And all the best laid plans and all of that. So if it's part of the, if that's the plan, and then he dies or is injured or whatever, and he's not around anymore, she doesn't want it, and she now has all the power, then it's really up to her to do whatever it is, because she'll own it, to do whatever it is. Presumably, if let's say she's giving it to the daughter, he's giving it to the daughter, then it'll be up to, and the owner, the dad, is dead, then she's going to ultimately be in control of the business and can sell it or whatever. So that would be a sad situation. It's not so good if she doesn't want it, but she would control it, so she'd be able to sell it. If he's still around, then I guess they can renegotiate what they do, and but if he's still around and he's given it to her, then she's the owner.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Building Master Builders. To access the full recording and explore more resources, visit mbav.com.au. For expert guidance informed by real industry experience, you can also reach out to us at mbassist@mbav.com.au or call 9411 4555.
This podcast was recorded on Wurundjeri land. MBV pays respect to elders past, present and emerging.